What's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Caicos with you. And of course, we are pinpointing Tropical Storm Fiona on the cusp of becoming a hurricane as it gets very close now to Puerto Rico. We have been dealing with the heavy rain for quite some time in the Virgin Islands and now in Puerto Rico as this moves away from the Leeward Islands and gets a little bit stronger. So we are going to get right into it. If you are interested in keeping up with Fiona all day today, if you live on the Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico, hit me up on Twitter. I'm going to be posting updates on Fiona throughout the day. Again, that is going to be at Jonathan Caicos. Again, if you have a Twitter account, follow me on there. And again, look for updates as Fiona gets closer to potentially making a landfall on Puerto Rico. If it does not officially make a landfall, it's really not going to matter. Our impacts are going to be the same because we are looking at very, very heavy rain. As of the 8 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center, it is on the cusp of hurricane strength now. A 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Hurricane status starts at 75 miles an hour. It is close again to that hurricane status. You see the thunderstorms, the heavy rain right around the center there as it tries to form its eye. Structurally, it is still taking on some drier air, but again, that is just from a meteorological structural part. It's not going to play any kind of difference in determining our impacts because it's so close now to Puerto Rico and the heavy rain continues on the eastern side of the island. I got a report on Twitter that the southeast side has been seeing that heavy rain for several hours, and you see there the strong rain and strong winds continuing on the Virgin Islands as well. In terms of the wind, the strongest has been, these are current wind gusts, again, as of 8 o'clock in the morning on the U.S. and British Virgin Islands into that 40 to 55 mile per hour gust range. And now we're starting to push tropical storm force wind gusts. That's 40 mile per hour winds and above. There is the center of Fiona. So you still see we're getting those very strong winds, even far removed from the center. And most of the nasty weather when it comes to Fiona is on the east side. The motion of Fiona is off to the west-northwest, so it's in this general area, and it's on the western side, the south and west side of Puerto Rico. That's where Fiona could come ashore, but the dirty side of the storm, as we call it, where all the nastiest weather is associated with a tropical storm or hurricane, and really it's all nasty, but the worst of the worst is on the east side of the hurricane, and most of Puerto Rico is going to be on that side. I want to show you a future radar. This is the future high-res radar, and this is going to paint a picture on the timeline there. So again, for anybody that's watching from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, please share this video with your friends as we are going to watch this for you guys all day. And if you're watching from the United States, I just want to be clear that we do not expect this to come in our direction. This is going to be mainly something that really high impact on Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, the Dominican Republic, and then the extreme southeast of the Turks and Caicos before it strengthens and then potentially moves to Bermuda. If you're interested in the long-term life of Fiona, I'm going to have that part covered coming up in just a couple of minutes. But I want to show you here again the more short-term situation here that we have, and likely ugly situation that we have going on in Puerto Rico, the potentially life-threatening situation with the very heavy rain. The wind is going to be very strong. We could gust to hurricane force. That in and of itself can do damage, but I do think the biggest impact with Fiona is going to be the intense rainfall rates. And I'm going to show you some of the model forecasts here in a second. But in terms of when we're going to see the worst impacts from Fiona, it's going to be Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening, and that will continue for much of Monday morning. Here is the center, potentially at least in this scenario, coming onshore early to the middle part of your Sunday afternoon, and then working its way back out to sea in between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Note, though, that as we move into Sunday evening, here is 8 o'clock, we still have these very heavy bands. Again, that fire hose as Fiona pulls away from Puerto Rico, it's going to be lifting up a bunch of Caribbean moisture and just dumping on the island. So again, even as the wind to some degree starts to back off a little bit Sunday evening and into Monday morning, we are still going to be dealing with the very heavy rain. Look at some of these rainfall projections through Monday afternoon and evening. This is through 10 o'clock on Monday. And on the southern and western side of Puerto Rico, we could conceivably be pushing 2 feet of rain. Now, again, combine that with the terrain of Puerto Rico, that can no doubt cause life-threatening flash flooding, enhance that flash flooding, and then we're looking at the potential for some mudslides. So while the wind is going to be nasty at times, again, we're talking about wind gusts on the order of 75 to maybe 85 miles an hour, the rain is going to be the bigger situation. So please make sure that you are paying close attention to the situation that's unfolding in Puerto Rico, as we've been really talking since last week that this could be ugly, whether this was a tropical storm or hurricane because of the rain. Even San Juan, again, anywhere from 6 to 8 inches of rain, isolated higher amounts in and around the city as well, potentially isolated up to 10 inches to a foot. So there's a lot of rain coming down the pipeline. So again, please make sure that you are paying close attention. Latest forecast, again, from the National Hurricane Center as we start to get to that long-term look here on Fiona for those that are interested in the Turks and Caicos, Bermuda, and of course the United States, including Florida. Southwest side of Puerto Rico, again, we could have a landfall there later today, expected to become a hurricane just prior to that potential landfall. But then as you see it here, as we move into Monday, right around the Dominican Republic, and then Monday night into Tuesday, brushing the Turks and Caicos as a strengthening hurricane, Category 2 hurricane, and then approaching Category 3 major hurricane status again, as it heads toward Bermuda. We just had to deal with some impacts anyway from Earl just last week, and now we have to be on guard again for Hurricane Fiona, a strengthening Category 2 storm nearing the island of Bermuda. You will notice here, okay, that this is staying far away from the United States. This is something, again, we've been watching closely. If you follow me on Twitter, again, at Jonathan Caicos, then you know what I've been talking about. There has been a lot of garbage on Twitter lately. And for that, I'm going to go into the modeling. There's been one major run of the European ensembles that showed direct impacts to Florida and to Cuba. There are still a few members of the European ensemble runs. Again, that's with the different initial conditions put into the model that show this coming very close to Florida. I can tell you with very high likelihood, the United States does not have to worry about direct impacts. Anybody that is still preaching that direct impacts are with any kind of high probability, it's just hype, it's just clickbait. And you are not going to find that here on this channel with me. These are the computer models. So these are not the ensembles. These are the official global and hurricane models combined. And this is the product here of the brave men and women of the NOAA hurricane hunters and the United States Air Force hurricane hunters that put their lives on the line to fly in and around these storms, getting great data from meteorologists like me to help decipher much better model data because of the instruments that they are dropping in and around the hurricane. And you see here a very tightly consensus here of these computer models. That spec is Bermuda. Here are the Turks and Caicos. Here is the Dominican Republic. Here is Puerto Rico. And again, very good agreement now of the modeling. There is also a cold front that is going to be moving off the United States, which will help to push Fiona further to the east. So again, it is likely that not only because we have a strengthening Fiona, it's going to be more likely to be felt by the Bermuda High and be flung out to sea, but it's also going to help to be pushed by that system that's going to be moving off of the lower 48 of the United States. So again, direct impacts are going to be unlikely to the United States from Fiona. If you do have a beach trip coming up next weekend, though, to Florida, to the Bahamas, to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, even the Delmarva in New England, do watch out for rough surf and a high rip current threat. So indirectly, Fiona is going to impact the eastern seaboard. But again, direct impacts from Fiona are unlikely. If you see somebody preaching about direct impacts are still possible, that is on the extreme lower end of the possibility spectrum, and that is all hype and all garbage. Alrighty, guys, we are thinking about our friends in the Caribbean, especially the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, as we have a strengthening Fiona working into Puerto Rico. Again, hit me up on Twitter. My handle is @JonathanKegas. If you have a Twitter, I'm going to be posting updates on the progression of Fiona all day long today, so you can find some vital information there, especially if you are watching from the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, as our weather continues to get worse there, but now better in places like Martinique and into Dominica and parts of the Leeward Islands as we were impacted by Fiona yesterday. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Thank you for trusting us here at News 6 and Click Orlando. We got you covered in all things tropics. Again, tropically elsewhere, there's nothing to worry about, nothing to hit land. We're just focused on what is now almost Hurricane Fiona and what will likely be Hurricane Fiona later on Sunday. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Stay safe if you are being impacted by Fiona.